Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 22nd episode of Slime Time Sidequest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is Plattym3.
And Yoda, this is.
God damn it, Yoda! Star Wars was the last episode. Get out of here.
Leave, I will not. New co-host I am. Now we talk of the Force and tasty food. Oh. Hey, what I tell you, you little green pest, get out of here. Get out. Shoot, come on. Oh, chase me away you can, but leave forever I will not.
Yangus, you still there? Everything okay on your end?
Yes. Sorry about all that. Ever since that Star Wars episode we just did, I can't get rid of that guy. Just Yoda won't leave.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. I mean, have you tried calling the IPC to help get rid of him?
IPC?
Yeah, Intergalactic Pest Control.
Wait, that's a real thing?
Of course. I mean, if you watch Star Trek, you would know all about it.
But that has... Platty, you know that Yoda has nothing to do with Star Trek.
Okay, well, glad we've got that problem resolved for Yangus then. Now then, let's get to the topic of tonight's episode.
Sure, but everyone keep your eyes peeled for any little green men running around.
Like Martians?
Well, I mean, Yoda might be considered a Martian, but, I probably shouldn't mention his name too much. He might show up again.
Yeah, the whole Bloody Mary thing. All right, well, tonight we have decided to try something a little different. We decided rather than picking just a specific console or series, we're going to pick a year. And if you listen to the last Slime Time Prime episode just a couple days ago, we had on two of the most prolific hosts of the Retro Encounter podcast from RPGFan.com, Mike Solosi and Alana Higgs. And one thing that they love doing on their podcast is playing games. And they had this one where they were voting on a bunch of different best of. They've had a couple different best of episodes. And once they voted for the best year of RPGs. And I remember listening to that like a year ago and just hearing so many RPGs in those years that I mean, they were arguing over years, and they're like, yeah, but this one had this. I was like, holy cow, there was a lot of good RPGs that year. I thought we could do a whole episode just on certain years. And since we're not just about RPGs, of course, there's even that like doubles, triples, quadruples, the number of great games that get released yearly that we could talk about. So we, did a little magic, spun a wheel, put our finger on the calendar, and chose the lucky year 1993.
Wow, what an unbelievable coincidence. That's the year I was born.
Yeah, real coincidence there. Okay.
You can't see it, but I just thumbed up and smiled at the camera.
I'm sure you did. Anyway, with us picking my sophomore year of high school, 1993, all of us were tasked to choose a game or two for tonight's episode that came out in 1993 somewhere. And to help us party like it's 1993, we've got some returning guests with us tonight, as always. We've got Pendy.
Do a barrel roll.
We'll be rolling some barrels tonight. Brother Jaybird.
Hello.
We've got AustNerevar.
Hello.
All right, everybody. We ready to do this?
Maybe.
Nobody's ready to do this.
I think everybody was waiting for who to show up again, but we're not.
No more Yoda.
Hey, don't mention his name, what I tell you.
All right, going with the other Y name person, Yangus. I will let you choose. I know I usually am like the horrible pun introduction, whatever. Yeah, you can just start laughing because I got nothing for this one. But Yangus, I'm going to let you, since you had nothing to do with the year that we picked, I'm going to let you pick whoever goes first tonight.
Well, I think since someone else tried to make a reference to our last episode like I did, I think we're going to call on Pendy first to talk about his first game that he has listed. So, why don't you roll in here, Pendy, and tell us all about your discussion.
Get the ball rolling, one might say?
Yeah, get it rolling, kind of like a barrel.
Something to do with barrels and rolling, I guess.
I mean, I assume you're talking about Donkey Kong in some fashion, right? He throws barrels, they roll,
Oh, that's true.
No, it's not. But for this game, we are going to do a barrel roll. Why? Because Peppy told us to do one. That's why. Because this is Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. That's the game I'm doing here tonight, or tomorrow, or whatever day it is. I have no idea. So if you aren't familiar with it, Star Fox is a popular series for Nintendo, which is a 3D rail shooter. It came out in Japan, North America, and Europe in February, March, and June of 1993. It was the first use of polygonal graphics by Nintendo and powered by their new Super FX chip. Shigeru Miyamoto was one of the main game designers, and he cites Star Wars X-Wings and some torii gates that were nearby Nintendo HQ as some of the inspirations for the game design. So, for example, all the different gates that you go through in the game, those are kind of inspired by the square-shaped torii gates that you see at Japanese shrines. So U-Star is Fox McCloud, leader of the Star Fox mercenary team, tasked with taking down the evil scientist Andros in your trusty prototype fighter aircraft. You'll also have your teammates Slippy, Falco, and Peppy. In this particular game of the series, they would be voiced later on, but in this one, in the Super Nintendo game, I love the little voices that they use. They just use like little sounds. So like Star Fox would be like, and then Slippy would kind of sound like a toad, like, and then Falco for some reason has this really deep voice, so his is more like a has an echo to it, and it's really fun. But in this case, you had 3 various routes to get to the final boss that you could choose, each with its own difficulty. Depending on the stage, you would get to fly your aircraft in a third-person or first-person view to fly around in. And sometimes you'd see both perspectives. So, for example, when you do one of the space stages early on, you would start out in the first-person view, but you would switch to a third-person view as you flew in and fought your way through various battleships and things of that nature. At the end of each stage, there would be a boss who would have strategic weak points that you need to take out to win. You can break, boost, shoot a basic laser, shoot a high-energy bomb, turn sideways, or tap that L or R button twice to deflect basic laser attacks with, you guessed it, a barrel roll. There was a lot of variety between the different paths you could take and a lot of secrets and bonus stages that you could find. This game had a lot of replayability. The N64 sequel is my favorite of the series, and that's actually where that whole barrel roll meme comes from, because Peppy tells you to do a barrel roll, and it became very famous after that. But this game is still a fantastic entry in it. It has a fantastic level and enemy boss designs that will keep you engaged the whole way through the game. The controls are very intuitive. The game is very exciting, fun, and well-paced. I highly recommend this to anyone who enjoys a good action game. And by the way, if you've never done it before, do yourself a favor and type "do a barrel roll" in Google and see what you get. So for everybody here, have you played this particular game in the series, or have you played any of the others, and what do you think?
I have played a little bit of this one. My start to Star Fox was back on the N64. I rented the Star Fox 64 once when I was a kid, but I ended up playing the original Star Fox for the first time when Nintendo when they put out the Super Nintendo Mini. And then with that one too, they also included the previously unreleased Star Fox 2, which was pretty cool. But yeah. I'm like you, Pendy. I absolutely just loved that the voices are pretty much the characters going like... my favorrit had to be Fox's, because him sounds like he's going like dab 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 dab.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They had a little bit of voice acting in it, but for the most part, they just like would show text and have the little voice effects. They were fun. Mm-hmm. It's almost like in the Dragon Quest games where like you'd get a different pitch of a sound depending on who was talking. Like you'd get a lower pitch for like bigger muscly guys and a higher pitch for the female characters and stuff like that, but taken to a whole new level. It was nice.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. I didn't even think about that comparison, but you're absolutely right. Because really, like, Dragon Quest is one of the few series that I can think of that does that sort of effect, you know, with just like NPCs talking to you, where they like change the pitch depending on the age of the character, so to speak, or like the appearance of the character.
Yeah, it's a nice little detail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A little way back then that they could actually do something.
Does Super Smash Brothers count as a Star Fox game?
No.
I think that's my most experience with the cast as well.
Because I know at least the first one, the 64 version, is a Star Fox game. All the professionals tell me so. But My experience with Star Fox starts and ends with the Nintendo 64 title, so I couldn't weigh in very much about the original 93 version. If I recall correctly, the 93 version is featuring the dad Star Fox. The Nintendo 64 version has his son.
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't look into that. I'm not sure.
No, it's the same Fox.
Is it?
Yeah, the story with James McCloud, Peppy, and Pigma O'Hare, that was like years before any of the events of any of the Star Fox games.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't played it. I haven't played all the Star Fox games yet, so I wasn't sure. Well, that's cool. Yeah, and the N64 game was fun because you could do. There's not just the R-Wing, but the other various vehicles as well. I've also played the DS game, but I haven't played them all yet. One day I will do more barrel rolls.
I played the 64 version as a remake. They made the remake for the 3DS a few years ago, as I recall. That was a good way to spend the morning doing a whole run on the game. Not my kind of thing personally, but it was a good way to spend the morning.
That game, if it's the one I think you're talking about, had a fantastic multiplayer option to it too. It was a lot of fun to. You just fight each other, and you could make some of the other ones powered by the PC and fight them as well. So just have a nice little dogfight with everybody. There's some kind of neat tricks you could employ to go after everybody, and you could not only battle each other in the R-Wing, but you could battle each other in the tank and some other stuff. So you could do multiple vehicle battles against each other. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I do know that in the European release of Star Fox 64, they did include a voice option so the characters would talk more like their original Super Nintendo selves, but they didn't include that. Yeah, they didn't include that in the North American version, though, for some reason.
That's awesome.
But it's a pretty good recreation of like what the old ones sound like too, because like Fox will now sound like more like he's going like but you'll have to look up some gameplay footage on YouTube if you can for the European version of Star Fox 64. But it's a funny little detail. It's funny that they added that in.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Alrighty, sounds like we're wrapping up that, and I'm gonna butt right in with one of my games because if we're talking about flying through space, might as well continue that trend. First, I am gonna give a little shout out to that little green Y dude that we've talked about. It won't summon his name, but if you listen to the last episode, I brought up the first X-Wing game that came out for PCs, and that game was a great flight simulator, had awesome Star Wars graphics, started the whole flight simulator, Star Wars simulators that went on to be TIE Fighter, and now they've got X-Wing Squadron games and the like. But the original X-Wing game that I talked about last year, or last episode of Sidequest, came out in 1993. So we'll go into all that again, but when we were looking up 93 games, I was like, hey, I actually just talked about one.
But can you do a barrel roll in that game?
Probably.
Nice.
I don't see why not. You're in the middle of space, spin on all three axes if you need to. But a game that I couldn't do a barrel roll in because I never got the hang of the controlling combat by itself. The one I was going to talk about tonight was Master of Orion. And this is the game that actually coined the term 4X games. There was an article in Computer Gaming World in the fall of 1993 when this game came out, previewing it. And 4X games, these are games like Civilization, where you're just trying to conquer or befriend everybody around you. And the 4X's stand for Explore, because you're expanding out from usually, for at least this game, you start on one little planet. You're exploring the galaxy, expand, getting new territory, new settlements, influence all around. Exploit, because you're using resources from planets and the like. And exterminate, meaning that you're attacking other civilizations, aliens, and the like. Nowadays, there's tons of 4X games, and Aust, you talked about one about a year ago, I believe.
Yeah, Stellaris, which is, as I understand, heavily inspired by Master of Orion.
Mm-hmm. So I picked up the original Master of Orion last month, knowing that we were going to talk about this, because I must have sunk a couple hundred hours into the sequel back when I was in high school. Loved Master of Orion 2. And a lot of 4X games claim that to be one of their inspirations. Master of Orion, though, was a little bit rough from having played more modern games and, you know, the newer civilizations and stuff like that. Going back to this, you can see the roots, but whoa, I played for a couple hours and was just like, oh my god, something happened. Something, dear god, just go on. Can a race find me? Because I surely can't produce colony ships fast enough to get far enough away and actually find other races. Probably my fault for picking such a large galaxy size when I started the game off originally. But basically, when you start a game of Master of Orion, you get to pick what race you are, and I think this one's got like 7 or 8 different races, and each race comes with their own bonus. I picked I think it was a reptilian race that had quite the population bonus. Like they bred 20% faster than anybody else. And I was like, oh, that'll be great. I'll just get a lot more territory, a lot more planets and everything. And of course, I'm thinking about this in a more modern setting. So I was like, yeah, tons of planets, tons of everything. Well, that didn't really happen. So picked a large galaxy, picked to have like 4 computer opponents, picked this race, and you start off, you're dumped on a single planet, and you've got a colony ship, got a couple little of the smallest combat ships there are, and you start growing. You can send out your colony ships, you can start exploring nearby stars. Started a little colony on the nearest habitable planet to mine, and one of the first things I noticed is each star system, when you go there, it's either got a planet or not, like period, one. When I played Master of Orion 2, there could be like whole planetary 4, 5, 6 planets in a star system, and you could just have a whole empire growing up from one star system. The first one, pretty basic, just got one planet in each star system that might be habitable. And something I found that was interesting, because a lot of these games you have, you're researching new technologies, either to get faster ships or better armament ships, or, you know, ways to terraform planets or more efficient factories. You're always building something. The research angle is always going on. Something that was kind of cool in this one, though, because a lot of the other 4X games I've played, you pick what you want to research, and you do that one research, and takes a few turns, and then it's done. This one, you could pick 5 different research options at once, in 5 different categories. You could, like, planetary this, or ships this, and you'd pick 5 different things to research, and you could use little sliding bars to see how fast, you know, did you want to put all your research into one, or did you want to split your research equally, so that you were constantly working on 5 different things. In a couple hours, I did not get through very much. I decided to try to leave them spread out a bit.
Yeah, that's pretty different from, like,
yeah,
some of the newer 4X games I've played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, of course, by leaving it split up, I said I'd go like 10, 11, 12 turns, and there would be no research happening. I'm like, geez, is anything going to go on? And then I look, and it's like, oh, I've researched 20% of all of these. So that didn't help at all. So I guess that's something they decided to improve upon going on, and a lot of games from there having gone back to this. I will say my home planet, the population boomed really fast. I loved that I just kept shipping off extra population to my new colony, and filled up my 2 colonies really fast. And after that, I had to wait forever. To make a new colony ship and I had like a huge planet with 20 million population, or whatever it was counted in, or it was 100 million or something like that. Whatever the max population was, it filled up in about 10 turns. And then it was like, geez, what do I do? I like jacking up my production. And something else that I'd missed from an earlier game like this, there were no like structures to build. I know in a lot of the other games I've played, you know, you heck, in Civilization, you build a granary, you build a library to increase your research, you build this, you build that on your home planet. This, again, there wasn't those kind of options. Again, there was little sliding bars. You could put the production on your planet either into factories, but that kind of just did production overall, made you some extra money. You could put it into defense structures or shipbuilding. You could build missile bases to protect your planets. You could build more ships. At one point, I was like building a small warship like every other turn, and just kind of sending them off to be as far away as the game would let me. At the time, I think I could go like 7 or 8 parsecs. So there's about a half dozen planets that I could at least, or a half dozen systems, not that many of them had planets, but at least keep a small defense ship there just in case anybody else showed up. The colony ships were taking forever, 20, 30, 40 turns. And it had a little countdown there. It was like, hey, this will take 63 years to build. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because presumably every time you hit next turn, that's a year in the game time. And it was going down about 2 to 3 years as my population was growing. But at one point, once the population topped out, it was like, okay, this is still going to take 30 more turns to build another colony ship. Oh my God, it's so slow. I only had to change.
There's no way to speed up time progression.
I could not find one, and that's something else I remember for a bunch of different games. Like basically, hit that, go to the next turn that something important happens.
Yeah. Like
go to the next turn that either you encounter someone or a ship reaches a planet or whatever. I wish I could have done that. Like I needed to skip 20 turns ahead at some points, just faster, faster, faster. And again, this is, a 28-year-old game at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the graphics, pure mid-90s PC DOS, they were pretty cool for the time period. I mean, looking at that, I don't remember them being horrible for the time period. Because, I played Master of Orion 2, which came out like a year and a half later. Wasn't super any better. But, I mean, it had a lot of what you would expect from a 4X game. But man, it was the bare bones. This was the this was the Dragon Warrior 1 of the genre.
Yeah,
you can see all the little stuff, but it was like a one-person RPG. It was not as many options. Still seeing what they were doing. So at the time, I could see it was pretty cool. But I got this on GOG for like $6, and I got 1 and 2 bundled together. And I can tell you, I will not start this one again. I will probably play around with Masters of Orion 2, because just the number of options in that blooms in just a couple short years.
Yeah, that makes sense that it's so bare bones, though. There was basically the first one.
Mm-hmm. I think they had done something a little. I was trying to think. There was some Star game before it that they, the same company had done. I'm trying to think what it was. Look on there. Looking up the word Star Lords. That's it. There was a game called Star Lords that had just come out a couple years before that was even more basic, but this was a iteration of. But
yeah, it's definitely one I want to play around with just to see where we've come from, because I love 4X. I've played Civilization, I've played Stellaris, I've played a bunch of the Civilization knockoffs. There's a fantasy version. It's a huge genre with tons and tons of copycat games out there that all bring their own little flavor to it. But I've never actually played some of the old 90s ones before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I played Masters of Orion 2 forever. I think when I first got an iPad 8 years ago. And I was like, I don't want to play games on my iPad. But you know what? I've never had an iPad before. What's out there? I think I spent $5 on a game called Orion that basically tried to copy Masters of Orion 2 in an iPad game. And that was fun. I mean, it worked great as a touchscreen, turn-based thing. Even 8 years ago on an iPad, these things were running on 1993 systems, so it's not like the graphics or the gameplay had to be so good. I did 1 or 2 little battles in the battle engine and really had a hard time trying to control my ships and making it do what I wanted, but that was a problem for me even back on Master of Orion 2. I used to I remember playing around with that for a couple times that I played through it, and probably 98% of the time afterwards I was just like, no, auto combat. I'll just, I'll build a big fleet and let the RNG decide. And it was just whoever had the bigger fleet, it was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, for people that want to get into strategic space naval battles, that's there, but it's rough.
So basically, it's just bare bones and slow. It's not necessarily that it's hard to understand.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, I knew what I was doing immediately from playing. I mean, I played the original Civilization, which was around this time as well. I think a couple of years earlier, I was looking at reviews of this game, and a couple of the very early reviews were like, oh, it's like Civilization, but in space.
Yeah. Well, it's already got a leg up over Stellaris then, because Paradox games are notorious for being used non-intuitive, I guess, tutorial light, which Stellaris and Crusader Kings 3, like their most recent games, are probably the easiest to get into of all their games. So it's if like I said, Master of Orion's already got that that puts that ahead of it in terms of comparison to Stellaris.
And I mean, part of it is I put hundreds of hours into the sequel, and I've played many other games. So I mean, it's hard to say, like, did I know how to do that because the game pointed me towards it, or I expected that feature to be there. So of course it was.
I can't imagine there would be much in the way of tutorial on a DOS game.
No.
Usually they were limited in space, and
it was in the instruction manual.
Right, exactly.
I'm sure. I didn't download that, but it came with the GOG stuff, as most of them do.
I mean, those old games, you pretty much have to have the instruction manual for like even just I've played a lot of the Sierra Adventure games, and if you want to know the story, like the opening cutscene is in the manual.
Yep. Oh no, yeah, that for all that text that they would have to put in.
Yeah.
They saved that for their graphics, and
exactly.
They needed every bit of space back then. Well, since Aust, you've been joining me on talking about 4X games, we will leave outer space, but take some interesting twists and turns through galaxies and dimensions or whatever, and talk about your game that you wanted to talk about.
Sure. So the game I picked technically did come out in 1993. Came out on the Mac in 93, which anyone who was a gamer, a Mac gamer in the 90s should probably immediately know what I'm talking about, because there were like, 5 games on the Mac back in the 90s?
if that.
Yeah. So this game, Myst, was a graphic adventure game. It was a puzzle game. Came out in 1993 on the Mac, and then about 6 months later, in 94, it came out on PC, which is where it got its main audience, I believe. But it was technically a Mac game first. It was developed by a pair of brothers, Robin and Rand Miller. I think they owned the company Cyan that developed it. At the very least, they wrote all of the material for it and designed the game. It was actually a driving factor in widespread adoption of the CD-ROM drive, because at the time, games primarily came on floppy disks, and it was getting to the point where the newest game would span 17 to 20 different floppy disks. You could only hold like a megabyte and a half on one. So this was they were one of the first CD-ROM games to come out at the time. That shortly after this, they started becoming more and more popular. But they decided to take advantage of the CD-ROM to add things like full motion video segments with actual actors playing characters in the game. And in this game, some of those segments weren't very long and were very, very low resolution, obviously, but they still at the time, like, that was mind blowing. I was probably too young to really appreciate that when I played it, but I remember my dad being really impressed, and aside from that, like the art style was computer generated, but you didn't see much like that, I guess, at the time. You were still moving out of blocky pixelated graphics from the 80s, and here we had these beautiful immersive first person computer generated landscapes that you didn't move around in real time. You just pointed, clicked and basically clicked through a slideshow, and there was some interaction with the environment, obviously, to solve puzzles and such, but when you really think about it, it wasn't much more than a slideshow with FMV segments and music added to it. But every time I come back to this game, like I remember most of the puzzles, but then I'll remember something wrong, and I'll spend like an hour trying to figure out why it's not working right. Looking at it from an objective point of view, as a gamer from 2021, this game does not give you any direction. It feels like.
Oh, there's none.
Yeah.
I remember playing this. It was a blank slate.
Yeah, I can only imagine how my dad, I remember my father beat this game on his own. I remember this is 1993. We didn't have internet in our house. I mean, nobody really did. I'm sure there was a strategy guide, but he didn't have it because I don't think it existed when we got the game. I'm sure at some point he called one of the paid hint lines that every video game company had back then. But he, for the most part, he made it through the game himself with the little notebook that was included in the box. And I remember looking at that notebook and seeing all of his notes and like puzzle diagrams drawn out, and thinking of it now, like he's not a gamer by any means, and I'm kind of impressed that he had the patience to work through this game all the way to the end and beat it. Because coming back to it now, like even knowing like maybe half the puzzles, like getting started, sometimes I don't have the patience to really get the game going. Because if you don't like reading, you're probably not going to like this game. Because there are tons of in-game books, and you have to sort of search for solutions to some of the puzzles and hints throughout some of these books and stuff. But the world building for it, to me, has always been like the coolest thing about Myst and its sequels. It has some of the most unique world building of any game that I've played, especially from that time period.
Did you read any of the novelizations?
I have not yet. I do intend to. At least I don't know how well written they are, but I know they're written by the creators. But I do intend to read the first one. They
were awesome. I read, because there were 3 that came out.
Yeah.
And they were amazing. The world building. You're right. It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I read them a couple times each in college. I remember.
I'll definitely get around to reading those, because it's, like I said, it's a world I've always been fascinated by, and even if I don't have the patience to work through the entire franchise of the games, like I do find myself sometimes like pulling up a lore video on Myst, just listening to some of the, like, because it gets so deep and there's so much of it. It's just hidden behind a very obtuse puzzle mechanic.
Yeah. I never played any of the other games, and I never beat it, but I remember, there were nights like my cool girlfriend and I would just sit up in college like, okay, we're going to try to beat this tonight. we remember a lot of the early puzzles. Let's do this. And no, we failed.
I know I've worked my way through the end, but it was using my dad's notebook, and I was really young, so like if I got impatient when I was young, I would just look up stuff. I wouldn't try to figure it out on my own like I usually do with games now. So I don't know if that counts as beating it or not. But I've seen the ending. I've seen all that the game has to offer, and it's just super immersive, super cool atmosphere. I played a little bit of Riven, but man, that's the sequel. I haven't. I can't get like farther than like I'll spend like a couple hours in it, and I don't get very far in it. I should just look up like some hints to get me past those stumbling blocks, but I always feel guilty about that later. Oh, and there is. I did want to mention this game has been ported and remade more times than Doom or Skyrim. Like, it puts all the memes about Skyrim to shame. I think it's been on the DS, the 3DS. It's been on all the consoles.
It's on all the mobile platforms.
It's on Switch now. There's a version on Switch, and it just got remade again. This version is not on Switch, but it just got remade again. It's on Steam, GOG. I think it's on Xbox Game Pass. And it has a VR component that you can play it in VR, although I don't know how well note-taking would go if you're wearing a VR headset. But it would be really cool to like be immersed in this island in VR, seeing as it's a place I grew up with.
I mean, thinking about how the game is, it's perfect for VR.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you guys then, since you know about this game so well and all the ports it has. Did you know that there's a parody version of this game called Pissed?
Yes.
You did?
I did know
Okay,
that.
I'm glad you do.
Yeah, look up videos of it. It's pretty hilarious. I remember my mom buying this when I was a kid and seeing it, and strangely enough, it has John Goodman in it.
I know that is definitely one of the most surprising things about it.
Yeah.
And he even has a song that he sings at the end of the game.
But I didn't think it was weird when I was a kid, because I guess I didn't really think about John Goodman being, who he is, and I just don't know how they got him for that game.
I know. I'll have to try and remember to send you guys in the video or in the voice chat. I'll have to send you a link to a video that goes over that game, because it's an interesting little watch.
Interesting. It's terrible. Like it's genuinely it's very lowbrow parody. Like it's not even clever parody. But it's interesting to look at, especially considering it has John Goodman in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not surprised it has so many ports over the years, because I remember back in the day how just insanely popular it got. It got so much hype after it got released. There were so many people that were into this game.
Yeah, like I said, it made the CD drive like the most. It put it on the map.
Nice. All right. Brother Jaybird, you've got a few games you want to go over. You want to pick one and start?
I do. This was a last-minute panic selection to round out my original selection, because I realized when I was looking over things that my choice was actually redundant, and so I needed a couple of things to talk about that weren't what I was originally going to talk about, because Matt Kraft was originally going to take one, but I'm afraid we just got notice that he's not going to make it tonight. And so I'll just steal from his material instead.
There you go.
So for the first one, it's Kirbys Adventure, the 1993 installment of the franchise, one of Nintendo's mainstay franchises, which is always nice. Kirby came out in the 90s. It was I wouldn't call it it was an interesting little platformer for the Game Boy, featuring a circle with arms and feet, not legs, feet. No hands, no legs, but arms and feet. On his own quest to get food back from an evil, I don't know, would you call King Dedede a penguin? Is King Dedede officially a penguin? I don't think he is. He just looks like one.
Yeah, he just looks like one.
With the robe and the hat.
He's a quote-unquote penguin.
He's a DDD. So that was a pretty simple adventure. So it's kind of like a watered down idea of Mario. Instead of Bowser capturing the princess, it's DDD is capturing the food. And Kirby, he likes food for himself, so he goes after it and shares the joy. Much beating up ensues. So that was the basic premise of Kirby. Kirbys Adventure took that premise and decided to just start dumping in lore out of all the. That completely changes the premise of Kirby's entire setting. The story of Kirbys Adventure is, instead of DDD stealing the food again, there's a crisis in the country of Dreamland, and that crisis is that nobody can dream. We're not entirely sure how they all figured out how they can't dream, but they can't dream, and that's a problem. And they go and investigate, and it turns out that the sacred relic, the Fountain of Dreams, at the center of Dreamland, most important thing that gives everyone the ability to dream, has stopped working. And why has it stopped working? Well, it's because the central item in the relic, the battery and source of its power, the Star Rod, has been broken. Well, who broke it? DDD. Because of course DDD did. And what is DDD doing with the broken Star Rod? Well, he gave it to all his friends. And what is he doing in the meantime? Well, he's using the Fountain of Dreams as his own personal pool, which is, the look you really want to go for when you ruin everybody's lives. So Kirby goes on his adventure to restore the Star Rod by going and beating up all of DDD's friends once again to get the sacred relics back and then put them together. That would be the basic premise of the game. Big step forward in the lore, adding a bit of extra fantasy to the title, to the series. It also introduces, very notably, a character called Meta Knight. who made waves back in the day for basically well, this is going to be a spoiler, but it was 20 years ago, and everybody who knows like basically anything about Meta Knight recognizes this. Meta Knight was interesting because he would, by turns, help Kirby out by there would be segments in the gameplay where he would throw you an invincible candy and let you just run through an entire field of enemies untouched. And then at the same time, he would turn around and sick his own minions on you and expect you to fight them all. And this would culminate ultimately in a boss battle against Meta Knight during the second to last world, Orange Ocean. And if you beat Meta Knight, it's revealed that he is in fact another, for all intents and purposes, he might as well be another member of Kirby's species, which was fairly revolutionary for its time because the Kirby species is actually very minimal. There are only, even here we are, what is it, 30 years on since Kirby, almost 30 years now since Kirby's Dreamland came out. And there's still like maybe 4 or 5, somewhere between 3 and I think 5 different members of Kirby's species, depending on how you count them. And the last 3 may or may not be one person, depending on who you talk to. So this introduced Meta Knight. This introduced the Fountain of Dreams. This also introduced the series tradition of going very suddenly cosmic at the end of each game. Because once you put the Star Rod back together and vanquish DDD, we're treated to a little opening cinematic in which DDD, in a panic, begs Kirby from the bottom of his heart not to install the Star Rod back into the Fountain of Dreams, not to solve the problem. And Kirby is just not listening to him, because why would you listen to him? DDD broke things, decided to use it as a personal tool, and then fought Kirby. No one explains things to Kirby, so Kirby very clearly decides to fix the problem as he sees it. So he puts the Star Rod back in, and oop, out pops a demon. DDD, Master Communicator. So the true final boss of the game is, for all intents and purposes, a sorcerer demon called Nightmare, who was sealed away in the Fountain of Dreams, which was why DDD broke the Star Rod to prevent him from getting in and out. So Kirby must use the Star Rod to vanquish this evil sorcerer in a really quite impressive battle in the sky. DDD basically sends Kirby to the moon to have this fight, and it's a very interesting sequence. But it also, but what's really notable about it is that this is like the first step Kirby takes into the cosmic mythology that it eventually develops over time. The first really cosmic encounter and threat. So this was Kirby's first step into a larger world. And that is basically the game that starts laying the foundations of Kirby's overall lore.
I still have yet to play more than a couple hours of any Kirby game.
I've beat Dreamland too, but I haven't played many of the others.
So is Adventure for the Super NES or the NES?
Adventure is for the Nintendo Entertainment System NES, but there was a remake for the Game Boy Advance called Nightmare in Dreamland, which was actually my first exposure to the title. My history with Kirby starts during the N64 age. We would rent Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, from Blockbuster and play that a lot. I did not own a personal Kirby game until Nightmare in Dreamland, which was the remake of this game. And it was interesting going back and seeing, what's changed in the series mythology between the two versions. Because Kirby's Adventure has the prototypical elements that would become common to Kirby's. It's the first game, for example, with copy abilities. Kirby's iconic enemy imitation feature, where he, for all intents and purposes, doesn't merely eat his enemies, like he does in Dreamland. This is how Kirby solves his problems. He eats them. Kirby eats his problems away. But this time he gets something back for it. So the copy ability, Kirby's copy ability, much like contemporary video game old school star Mega Man he would copy enemy abilities and get to use them. But unlike Mega Man, instead of beating bosses for boss abilities, Kirby could do it from basically anyone. Any particular enemy could give him a power. And so people who are familiar with the modern Kirby franchise will recognize, oh, Kirby ate a fire enemy. He gets the fire power. People, he ate a water or an ice enemy. He gets an ice power, or a spark enemy. He gets spark powers. Though if you're young enough, you probably came into the series post Nightmare and Dreamland, where there was a big overhaul of the art and style of Kirby. Nightmare and Dreamland and the contemporary Kirby anime from like the early aughts, the early 2000s, made a very specific gimmick where each new power Kirby got would give him a hat, a little tiara, usually a tiara, but a hat of some other kind, in which he gets to display his ability. So if he ate a fire enemy and got the fire power, well, he'd have a giant crown of fire roasting on his head. Or if he got, let me see, what was it? If he got the hammer ability, if he ate a hammer, he would get the little, what do you call it? The little wrapped bandana worn by Japanese workmen. I forget what they call it. You see, this is something, it's a fairly common thing in manga when they're depicting workmen or certain kinds of salesmen who run stalls. I forget the name, and I don't want to get it wrong. But it's the little wraparound white and blue thing. Have you guys ever seen that when you watch anime or manga?
Can't say that I remember that.
Nope.
Gosh, I must sound like a dope. Okay, well, let's see. But hats essentially is what it is. Kirby, starting in the early aughts, the new Kirby franchise would feature Kirby wearing hats. That's not the case in the original Kirby's Adventure, with, I think, one exception, actually. That, ironically enough, didn't make it into the main franchise to date, but I'll get to that in a later point. In the original Adventure, Kirby would at most get a color change when he got a new ability. So, for example, if he ate an ice ability, he would turn blue, and he'd be blue constantly, regardless of whatever setting you were in. And another interesting thing is that prototype Kirby was actually a lot goofier than he would be in later days. Starting around again the paradigm shift in Nightmare and Dreamland and anime, Kirby was presented as cuter, more babyish, sweeter, more enjoyable. I would imagine they did this to highlight the dissonance when they finally started throwing the cosmic nightmare bosses at you again. But in the original Kirby's Adventure, he was actually a lot goofier. They often have little segments whenever Kirby goes to a new stage in these early games, in which Kirby would have some little interaction with the stage, a little skit. And a lot of these skits in the early days were actually very goofy, in which Kirby was constantly either getting knocked around or goofing up or falling over. There was a status bar in the original Adventure that would give you an update for whatever was happening to Kirby at the time. If he was swimming, if he was flying, if he was at the goal during the goal thing. Whenever he took damage, his status would be ouch. And many of his abilities would show these often little panicky expressions as Kirby's powers got the better of him. Tornado made him dizzy. Burning set him on fire. All sorts of little goofy things. But this was a big deviation from the cuter standard portrayal we have today, which was actually very interesting.
Alrighty, let's move on from one iconic series to another. Yangus, you ready?
Yes, I am.
Well, you're here to speak of our doom.
Yeah. Well, I got to keep this going because I started this trend way back a few episodes, so I got to always bring up a game every other one, you know. Before I do that, though, I will just mention real quick. So when we were planning this episode, Platy sent us all a list of games that came out in 1993, and when I was actually looking through the list to figure out ones I wanted to talk about, I'm surprised that I've actually played quite a few of them that have come out from that year, whether it's been on re-releases or from remakes. A few examples from PC games. There was two from Humongous Entertainment called Putt Putt Goes to the Moon and Fatty Bear's Birthday Surprise.
Yeah, I love those games.
I almost thought about mentioning Putt Putt when you guys were talking about your space stuff. Just be real quick and be like, hey, that's a game from 1993 in space.
I played all of those humongous games, but yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh yeah,
We're gonna talk about
those
that.
would be fun to talk about if we ever get the chance. But I played those ones. I played like Phantasy Star 4, Romancing Saga 2 originally came out in 1993. Even though Plattym and I, played the remake / remaster last year. Yeah, I figured that was gonna that response. But when going through the list, I was surprised that there were a number that I played. But the one that I first thought of when we were going to do this episode was actually a game that I share my birthday with, and share my birthday month with, and that is Super Mario AllStars. Originally came out in August 1993 here in America. The date seems to have changed. I thought it was originally August 2nd, but currently the date shows it came out August 11th, 1993. I don't know which one is the correct release date for it, but we'll just go with August 1993. Anyway, this is a game that is an early example of an HD remaster / remake treatment. Nintendo took all of the original Super Mario Brothers games from the NES era and upgraded them with new graphics, revamped music. They added multiple save files, which is a big godsend, so you don't have to try and replay all of Super Mario Brothers 3 to get back to where you were. If you can't find the warp whistles, you'll still be able to save your progress and come back to it. Or in like the case of the original Mario Brothers game, you can get to like you can get to like World 2-1. You can save your game and quit, turn your console off. And when you turn it back on, go back to that game. Hey, look, you can start right from the beginning of World 2 where you left off at. So there were a lot of nice little tweaks and changes to the original NES games for a new generation of players, or for people who originally grew up with the NES and wanted to experience these games in a brand new way. This game included the first Western release of Super Mario Brothers 2, which here in the United States was referred to as Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels. There's a lot of explanations out there that goes into the history of all that. So just to keep it short, Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels is actually Super Mario Brothers 2 that Japan got. We didn't originally get the game in the NES era. We got it on Super Mario All-Stars here. So first time we got to experience the original intended Super Mario Brothers 2. If you want to learn more about that, there's tons of articles and videos and all sorts of things on YouTube and elsewhere you can read up about all that history. Anyway, this game, like I said, it came out in August 1993, which was both the same month and the same year that I was born. Again, I'm not really sure on the date, but I've always then joked after finding out about that I must have been born to be a Mario fan, since I almost share a birthday with a Mario game, or I do share with it, again, depending on when it actually came out.
So, are you not the original Yangus? Are you a remake?
I'm the Super Nintendo version of Yangus, I guess.
Okay.
But
the one that we never got in the United States.
Yep. Yeah. You see. I'm actually the older Yangus. The younger Yangus, he didn't come overseas, or he didn't come out overseas with that Mystery Dungeon game. So true. So true. You got me there. Yep. Apparently, I was also a redhead. Who knew? But this was actually the first way that I experienced all of the original NES Mario games. I ended up playing it for the first time at a relative's house when they moved back here to the state of Iowa. We ended up going to visit them. One of my cousins, who was in college at the time, he had left his Super Nintendo at his parents' place. I found they had one, and I asked if I could play it. They said sure. And one of the first games I tried was Super Mario All-Stars. I'm like, hey, cool, a new Mario game. I've never seen this one before. And that was how I first played the original Mario Brothers, played Mario 3, both Mario 2 and The Lost Levels, even though The Lost Levels totally kicked my ass as a kid and still does even as an adult. But this was my first hands-on with the original Mario games. And it was my main way that I got the chance to play them until eventually the the Game Boy Advance series of Super Mario Advance games came out, which then brought like each of these games, including Yoshi's Island for the Super Nintendo, onto the Game Boy Advance handheld. This was one that, even though I didn't get a whole lot of chances to play it, I always did enjoy it, and I still have a lot of memories playing the game. And one that I remember in particular was when Mario's 25th anniversary rolled around back in 2010, Nintendo released this game onto the Nintendo Wii, along with a booklet and a music soundtrack that would come with it that would show like design documents. It had sound selections from the different Mario games and different sound effects on the other half of the CD. And this was actually on Christmas Day when I got this game. This marked the first time that I beat the original Super Mario Brothers in some form. I had very little chances to play it when growing up. Again, most of my chances to play it was with Super Mario All-Stars. Never really had any experience with the NES at that point. Never had bought the original off of the Wii's Virtual Console or anything. So getting to actually beat that Christmas Day was pretty exciting. Probably seems silly to be excited about that, but since it was one of those games that I just had, always wanted to try and beat it, but I never could because I just never really had the opportunity, it was nice to finally get to do that. And really, I don't have a whole lot else to say about Mario All-Stars than I already have. I think it's visually a great looking remake of these games, has some great music. It's my preferred version my preferred way to play the original Mario games from the NES era, and I definitely would recommend checking it out if you have either a Super Nintendo collection you're trying to build up. If you have a Nintendo Wii and you can find the 25th anniversary release, try and get that. Or if you have a Nintendo Switch, you can play it through the Super Nintendo Online app that the Nintendo has put out if you have the online service. And it's one that I like with Super Mario World. I've talked about some of these other games in past episodes because I've joked that I'm the Mario guy, but I really do like this series a lot. And this is one of the games that when I was younger really helped cement that, because it let me see firsthand experience with the original games and get a good hands on with them. And then eventually got the Game Boy Advance versions, but getting the chance to return to the actual collection of them that got me even more into Mario was really cool when I was a kid. So, yep, don't really have much else to say other than it's a very good collection to check out. And if you're looking to play the original Mario games in some form, you can't go wrong with this collection.
Yeah, it's hard to say anything bad about it. I think it was the first way I ever experienced the classic NES titles.
I think it's been the last one I've tried. I think right after Mario 35 went offline back in April. My son was like, "Oh man, I liked playing that game," and I was like, "Well, you can still play Mario." And sat down, and I think I beat it in like a half an hour by, because we can all warp to level 8-1 pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So I showed him. I was like, "Hey, look at that. You want to keep playing? It's right here on our, like you said, it's right there on the Switch Online."
Mm-hmm. And it's very nice too that whether you played the game, the original Mario Brothers, for example, on the NES one or on the Super Nintendo one, it's nice that you can still even with the NES one, you can create a save point at the very beginning of World 8. You just have to make kind of with an emulator where you would make a save state. It's pretty much like that. So even if you end up losing all your lives, it's I got to go back all the way to World 1. You can just click on that and boop, there you go. You're back to World 8. Because that was, you bringing that up, Plattym, that was one of the biggest reasons, too, why I just could not beat this game when I was younger and before 2010. Because you get to World 8, and when you don't have that much experience with the game, it can really kind of kick your ass. World 8 is definitely not going to pull its punches, because I remember when playing this on Christmas, one of my older cousins who was visiting at the time at my grandma's when we were there for Christmas Day, he was trying to show me some tricks to get through World 8 and be like, oh, if you can take this warp piper, if you want to get past these Hammer Brothers, here's where you can grab a mushroom, and then if you go a little further, here's where you can grab a fire flower. Trying to show me that, and it was like, oh, okay. So it's cool that even newer generations or younger kids, however you want to word it, that they can still learn about this game. And because I remember when even that after playing it and learning about from my older cousin, it was really cool. And I'm sure with your kids it was probably sort of the same thing, seeing the warp zones and being like, oh, that's cool. You can jump ahead a few levels. You can jump ahead a few worlds.
Yeah. I mean, and Mario 35. Got a lot of people playing that game.
Mm-hmm. But
yeah. Well, you ran right through my transition for your other game, so congrats. I'll set you up maybe a little bit more explicitly next time. But someone who's ready to run through his own transition, because I got nothing else to go with right there. We're gonna go to Pendy and the game that you want to talk about. Your run through.
Yes, it is time to solve a mystery. It's time for Shadowrun. And this is actually right from the opening screen of the game. Let me bring it up here. Gives a nice little intro to the game. The year is 2050, and the megaplexes are monsters casting long shadows. When you become a Shadowrunner, That's where you live, in the cracks between the giant corporate structures. The megacorps are powerful in a time when power means information. Computer information flowing in the global network called the Matrix. Dun dun dun. In Shadowrun, you start off in the game in the morgue, presumed dead. Of course, you aren't really dead, but you wake up not knowing how you got there or even who you are. You have to piece together the mystery in this dystopian cyberpunk action RPG adventure. You will use various guns and spells to fight your way through various monsters and gang members. You can hire up to 3 Shadowrunners, mercenaries for hire, that's what Shadowrunners are, to help you along the way. The game is based off a tabletop game of the same name, Shadowrun, and the story is loosely based off a novel by the tabletop game's creator. The Super Nintendo game first came out in North America in May of 1993, followed by a European release in August of 1993, and finally a Japanese release in March of '94. It was developed by the Australian company Beam Software. To move the story along, you had to talk to various NPCs and find clues with a dialogue tree system. You would collect keywords that you could ask about to various NPCs and unlock more dialogue options. At certain points in the game, you'll need to enter cyberspace, which is called the Matrix. That's what the Matrix is in this game world. The game switches between its default isometric perspective to a top-down perspective, where an avatar of yourself will explore the Matrix and fight intrusion programs as you gather data and money. The game was a critical success, winning many awards of its day, but unfortunately, at the time, it was a commercial failure. A lot of retrospective reviews label it as a game that was ahead of its time, and it now has a strong cult following. There are so many RPGs that are all swords and sorcerers in a medieval type setting. So to have an RPG in a futuristic cyberpunk setting was, and still is to this day, a refreshing change from the norm. The game features a cursor system to search for items and to fire your weapon. That can be a bit clunky at times, especially since this involves using a controller. And it can also be a bit grindy when it comes to getting money sometimes. But other than that, the game's story and various gameplay elements are very enjoyable. I'd recommend this game to anyone that's looking into a little variety into their RPG diet. It's a very fun game.
So it was an RPG?
Oh, yeah, it's an action RPG. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you say the shooting and, yeah.
Yeah, you fight with a gun, but you level up and you have different skills that you level up as you go along. It's definitely a basic action RPG. It's very fun.
I assume that this game is the precursor to Cyberpunk 2077, right?
I don't know.
Cyberpunk 93.
I'm sorry. When you were talking about how, this is a cyberpunk themed game, that immediately popped in my head. It's like, oh no.
Oh yeah. No, it's a game like that, but only done right.
Okay.
Oh, zing!
Doesn't take much for that.
It's actually finished.
And what's funny is that there's a Sega Genesis game also called Shadowrun, also based off the tabletop RPG, but it's a completely different story and almost a completely different game system. It was actually developed by a different company, so they did. You've got 2 versions of the game, so you can try either one and see what you like.
But was it released in 93?
I believe so. I believe it was,
okay.
at least around the same time.
So if it's action RPG, then Pendy, maybe you said it and I just missed it, but if it's action RPG, is it more like Secret of Mana action RPG, where you move your characters around, attack, or is it more of they hit or miss depending on what you talk to people, but is it more like Zelda where you just run around and you slash stuff and you pick up hearts to heal yourself? What would you say it's more stylized gameplay combat wise? You run around with a gun to shoot people, so you have this little cursor and you point the cursor at the various bad guys and you shoot your gun, or you can choose spells to point the cursor and do your various spells at people. So the gameplay is kind of like that. And then as you're going along, as you kill people and monsters, they'll drop money. You'll earn karma points, which is what you use to level up your various different skills and things of that nature. It almost sounds like with the point and not point and click, but you have the little cursor on the screen as you move around. It almost reminds me of some of those. Oh, what's the game I'm thinking of? There's a Super Nintendo game where you play as cowboys and you run around and you have a cursor that you move around on the screen, and that's where wherever it aims at, you shoot your gun then.
Okay. Yeah, and I take that back. The Sega Genesis game actually came out in '94. I just googled myself.
All right, I'll cut that whole part of the podcast. Don't worry about it.
No, that's a Sidequest tradition of me spouting out incorrect facts. So that's okay. Keeping it up.
This whole segment will appear in the podcast, and just they'll expect you not to listen to catch it.
Oh, it's Wild Guns, Pendy. That's the one I was talking about.
Gotcha.
Came out by Natsumi in 1994, and that's one where like you run around as a cowboy, and the screen has like a cruiser of sorts, or cursor, excuse me. Yeah, there's a cruiser running around too. There's a cursor that you use to point around and shoot your enemies as you play around on the stages. So when you were talking about that, it instantly made me think of that game.
And I thought it was interesting in this game. I don't know if it has any real consequence to it, but you can just shoot pretty much anybody and take them out, even if they're just like a random NPC that might be able to give you information. You can just take pretty much anybody out, kind of like that was it EverQuest, I think, that you can do that, where you can pretty much attack anybody. So if they're a key character, they won't die, and they'll give you like a little warning shot saying like, hey, you shouldn't kill people that are not trying to harm you. But if it's like some kind of like unimportant random NPC, you can just gun them down and do whatever. You don't actually get anything from them. You only get like experience points and money from actually shooting the bad guys. But it was very interesting.
So no, like shooting grandma being like 10 points, 10 points. Oh, well, that is definitely a game I've never heard of. I guess I'm not part of all the cults that Pendy is part of.
No, you're not part of the cool people cult. I'm sorry.
Oh, I've never been accused of that one. So, but someone who obviously must be, because looking at his lineup of games, it's like tentpole. Brother Jaybird, we're going to come back to you to talk about another game from your obscure list.
Obscure, he says. I'm about to start talking about jump and shoot, man, and he says I'm obscure. You just never played games, Platt. I'm pretty sure you just missed the 90s decade entirely, okay?
I mean, I remember staying up all night one time to play Mega Man 2. And I think that's the only Mega Man I've ever played.
Well, this game came out much later than Mega Man 2. This game came out right around the same time Mega Man 6 did, so yeah, you definitely missed this one. This one is Mega Man X, the first big another big paradigm shift in in a video game franchise. Adventure expanded for Kirby, so Mega Man X expands the Mega Man series. This is Mega Man for the 90s. You may remember the little blue bot who kept running around shooting other robots. Well, this is the little blue bot who shoots even bigger, nastier robots. Mega Man X was a big paradigm shift. Very typical of the 90s, much edgier, entirely different aesthetic, more futuristic, more action-oriented, not quite as slow and precise as the original classic games were, but X was very technical in a sense that the original Mega Man wasn't. You had all these new abilities you had to orient. You had dashing, you had climbing, you had power moves that could be powered up over time, that you had upgrades that would manipulate how literally all your moves work at the same time. And unlike the regular game, unlike the classic Mega Man games where you get some fancy projectile usually or something very simple, once you started charging up attacks in Mega Man X, you would get these screen-filling, flashy anime finishing moves that would destroy everything around you. It was a big change for the Blue Bomber back in the day. Has anybody here ever played any X games? Not just the first one, but any of them in particular?
Well, I only played the first one. I've played some of the others, but the first one is the one that I played the most of, and really that's the only one I knew about when I was a kid, and found out later on there was all these sequels.
Yeah. I got on board the Mega Man train about later in life with the Battle Network series, but X is really one of the seminal influences there. X gives us the timeline for Mega Man. Instead of just a bunch of games with Mega Man chasing Dr. Wily, we have Mega Man of the future dealing with all the problems Wily's caused. We have Battle Network was actually a divergent timeline for the same time. It was that was Mega Man based in the new aughts for the internet age, but they did have some very key influences from the X series. X gave us, for example, navigators. Who were in the lore essentially characters who would run missions for you and direct you where to go. It's the people who would give you your assignments, and that became a big part of Battle Network. There were actually Battle Network characters based directly off of X characters, including in one of the Gaiden games, Zero. Zero was a big addition for the X game too. According to in developer chat has indicated that the character known today as Zero, who unlike classic Mega Man or Mega Man X is bright red, has the long ponytail, and famously wields a sword instead of a cannon on his arm. We know from Keiji Inafune himself that Zero was originally supposed to be the new main character for the X series, but developers said, that's cool, but he looks way too different. Fans may not like that, so we're going to come up with an entirely different character to be the main, and that gave us Mega Man X, who closely resembles the original. And Keiji Inafune said, "Yeah, okay, sure. I'm going to put Zero in anyway, and if he can't be the main, he's going to be the coolest character in the entire series." And he was.
Yeah, I've played the Zero series.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it became that fan favorite, and they came up with the Zero series after that.
He gets all the cool scenes. He gets the sword. He gets the hair. Yeah. He he got a lot. Zero got a lot of spotlight from the developers.
Yeah.
As cool as,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, as cool as Zero is, like just the overall series of Mega Man X games, they're very good. And like I remember playing the first one, and just that first level is very dynamic and brings you in, and it's a good opener to the whole game. And that whole series is a lot of fun. They definitely refreshed the series in a way that was very good, very fun.
Yeah, Highway Stage it has the best soundtrack in the whole game, in my opinion. The first one, the opening music.
Oh, that you talking about how it refreshed the series? It actually really did. That was really important for the series because we were hitting the same year Mega Man 6 came out. And Mega Man 6 and classic Mega Man had gotten distinctly into a bit of a rut as this time had gone on. I mean, they were all good games, but they were all very, very similar. You have 8 bosses, you run through a stage, you fight the boss, then you take on the final villain, you go through his stages, you fight the bosses all over again in the final boss. And it had gotten into a rut because the stories and the final villain all turned out to be very, very similar. So instead of fighting Dr. Wily directly, you were fighting Dr. Cossack. And why are you fighting in Mega Man 4? And why are you fighting Dr. Cossack in Mega Man 4? Because his daughter was kidnapped by Dr. Wily. In Mega Man 5, you're fighting Proto Man. Why are you fighting Proto Man? Because it's not really Proto Man. You're fighting Dark Man, who's working for Dr. Wily. Mega Man 6, robots from around the world have been kidnapped and reprogrammed by Mr. X. And Mr. X looks an awful lot like Dr. Wily. And why has Mr. X done this? Well, guess what? Not only does he look like Dr. Wily, he is Dr. Wily. And so you had a second trilogy of games where it was not just, it was not Dr. Wily, but actually Dr. Wily. And so we had hit a second phase of rut for the classic series that it would have trouble breaking out of. It would not. So the X series actually breathed a lot of life into Mega Man at this time because there were fingerprints of Dr. Wily in X, but very, very small. And it was not, in fact, Dr. Wily this time. In fact, that may have actually saved the series, giving us a game where it was not, in fact, Dr. Wily.
Well, now I don't have to play all these original games because you just spoiled everything for me.
You're welcome.
Yep, thanks. 30 years of not playing them, now has been well justified.
We need a side-by-side comparison in the video of this of Mr. X and Dr. Wily, just so you guys can see, so the viewers at home can take a look at this if they find the YouTube video.
I still remember getting this game. My mom would would take me to a pawn shop a lot, or to several different pawn shops for like video games and stuff back in the SNES days to get them cheap. And I just remember the guy who worked there asking us if we'd heard of it, and I was like, no. And he said, oh, you haven't heard of Mega Man? And he popped it in. I played like a few minutes of the opening level, and then we took it home. And I don't know why that just sticks in my head, but you mentioned, I think back in the or maybe it was me, back in the episode we did on Battle Network, and you mentioned how much of a departure it was, and from the games that came before it. And I was like, yeah, when I first got the Battle Network games, I popped it in my Game Boy. I was like, this isn't Mega Man X, and that's because Mega Man X was pretty much like all I knew of the character, and that's still in my head when I hear the name Mega Man. This is the game I think of.
Yeah,
Nice.
That first level was probably actually a good way to get you in, to help you get a stepping stone into the game. The first level is actually lauded, I understand, by designers as actually a very good bit of opening gameplay design, teaching you how to do all the things you need to do, how to interact with the stage, how to shoot things, how to jump and shoot things. Internet personality Ego Raptor, who you probably may know under the name of Aaron of Game Grumps, did a whole segment on why the game design from Mega Man X was actually very good. And if you've got the stomach for the swearing, go and see it. It's there's a lot. It's Ego Raptor. There's a lot of swearing. But it actually goes into quite a lot of detail about how this all works and why it's such a good design. So if you are a design aficionado, go and check it out.
Nice. Well, this is a perfect transition to talk about my second game, because if you want to talk about a game that was beautifully designed, and screw Yangus's Super Mario All-Stars, which I was trying to set up for later in the episode so I could come in right behind it with my awesome Mario game, the real treat of 1993. Don't care that it was maybe not the same month that Yangus came into the world, but it could have been. Oh, Mario Math Blaster. You mentioned Math Blaster earlier, and I swear I remember installing Math Blaster years later, when it, like 2002, 2003, about a couple years into my teaching career. I was also our tech person at school, walking around with floppy disks, 3.5-inch disks, installing stuff everywhere. And even then, I remember we were still playing Math Blaster.
Oh yeah,
Kids
Math Blaster came out in '93, but it got very big, I think, around the turn of the millennium. It was everywhere. When I was in elementary school, it was like the game to go to, and so we'd have teachers sit us for time in the computer room, and we'd be all sitting in front of computers, and we'd have to do something, and I would play Math Blaster.
Yep.
I would play on the hardest difficulty, but give myself something to do, teach myself negative numbers.
Oh, wow. If we're talking negative numbers, I mean, that's like the difference between AD and BC. And if we're talking about time like that, we must be talking about the best Mario game ever, Mario's Time Machine.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, look at that. That was an even better transition. I should have just let you start that one. So, wow, Mario's Time Machine. I don't even know how to go into this. The only thing I can think of, I was trying to look up some different stuff, but I think this was Nintendo trying to capitalize on Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. They basically made Where in Time is Mario. And this kind of rings of, there was laws back in the 80s and 90s that broadcast television had to have a certain amount of educational television online every week. And so early Saturday morning cartoons or early Sunday morning program usually ran some, faux educational kind of stuff. Stuff nowadays you might find on PBS or whatever. But wow, Mario's Time Machine, that was an interesting educational game. I'd never heard of this until about 3 weeks ago. When looking at the list, I was like, what the hell is this abomination? And of course, I was like, no, this has got to be one of my games that I talk about. I'm totally playing through this. And I did. I played about through half of it. It's not too hard. especially if you have a little experience with history. I don't think this was exactly intended for 40-year-olds to play. God, I don't know who the frickin' target audience for this would have been. But basically, you're Mario, and it looks like they just stuck Mario into a early 90s PC game, because you're walking around with Mario, and you can jump, and you can dash and go fast, but it's almost like Mario's your cursor in a point-and-click adventure. There's nothing to it other than that. You start off, and talking about, like, having an instruction manual, I had no clue what I was doing when I started this. I'm like, I don't even... Like, the game just starts, and Mario's in a room with 4 or 5 pedestals and stuff on top of the pedestal, and I'm like, okay. There's a pedestal with an apple. Pedestal with a piece of paper. And I go over, and I just hit the 6 buttons until eventually, oh, I picked up the Declaration of Independence. What the heck do I do with this? And pressing the R button, all of a sudden a parchment comes up, and it's like Philadelphia, 1976 or 1776, and then it reads like a Mad Libs, like they took some historical thing and made it a Mad Libs. It's like, oh, in the summer of 1776, the blank met in the city of Philadelphia to write the blank, and da 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 da. Thomas Blank was here, who was once described as a statesman, a blank, and a this. And it's you hit R again, and there's 2 whole pages of stuff to read, but there's about 10 different blanks in there. And, like, what the heck do you do with all these blanks? Well, pressing a bunch of buttons, all of a sudden this, like, time machine pops up on the screen, and I can scroll through different cities, and I can scroll through different years in BC or AD. So I selected Philadelphia, 1776, and ta-da! There's Mario in, like I said, early 90s, like, background that's supposed to be Philadelphia. And I can walk, and I can go inside the inn, and I can go inside Ben Franklin's newspaper office, and I can go inside, like, a pub or something. And in each one, there's, like, 2 different questions I can ask, or I think one was a question I could ask. The other one's, like, give them the Declaration of Independence. If you try giving the Declaration of Independence, they're like, oh, maybe you should hold on to that. But basically, you just start interviewing Ben Franklin. And, I mean, there's not, like, any choices other than to just keep pressing A, keep asking him all these questions. He tells you a bunch of the history about what's going on that week. He's like, oh, I'm writing a newspaper. Guess what's going on? You know, the Continental Congress is here. And, you know, Thomas Jefferson's supposed to be writing something for us today. I better get over there. I hear they need my signature along with John Hancock and da-da-da-da-da-da. And through reading this, you get the answers to what goes in the blanks. So you go to these 3 locations, you talk to these people, and when you go back into that menu, if you click on one of the blanks, it brings up a bank of like 50 different words, and you got to scroll through all these different words. If you pick the right one that goes in the blank, nothing really happens. It goes back to the screen, so you can go to the next blank. If you pick the wrong one, you get a little frowny face at the top. If you do it 3 times, it boots you out of that parchment. Doesn't really matter. Nothing lost. You just press R again, and you're right back into it. So basically, the whole premise is fill up all the correct information in this thing. Then you go to a 4th building, which is where Thomas Jefferson is. You hand him the Declaration of Independence. He's like, oh, thanks, Mario. I almost forgot that. Our country owes you a debt of gratitude. And then you get some bonus points depending on how fast you go. And you head back to your time, and hey, there's another pedestal. So grab an apple, go see Sir Isaac Newton, grab a shield, go talk to Joan of Arc. And this just rinse and repeat over and over again. Presumably Bowser's at the end of it. I was trying to watch some things at the end. I'm like, I'm not playing all the way through this. And one of the playthroughs I saw, I guess the person didn't do it in enough time. And like Bowser's just sitting on the speech like, ha ha ha, you didn't finish in time. So, great time pun there. Other than just all this weird using Mario as a cursor for a point-and-click educational game, they did add some little action aspect into it. I forgot this. When you pick to go to Philadelphia, 1776, if you were to pick a different year, if you were to like to pick Philadelphia 1775, or I don't think anything happens, either that or you go to the mini game and that fails. But either way, when you pick a year and a time, you go to this mini game. And of course, it's a perfectly rational mini game that you would expect in a time machine game. You're Mario, and you're like on a jet ski or a surfboard or something. It kind of looks like he's water skiing, but there's no boat. You're just Mario in water randomly. And you see like an island in the distance, but only 3 things ever appear, no matter how many times you turn around, no matter how fast you go, whatever. There are mushrooms, there are little spikes in the water, and there are whirlpools. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Again, no, didn't read any directions. I'm like, okay. There is a little thing at the top that shows like 10 empty outlines of mushrooms. So through some trial and error of getting a mushroom, hitting a spike, losing that, going in the whirlpool and being spit back out in the time machine room, I eventually figured out that you need to get 10 mushrooms without hitting the spikes. And once I did that, I spent like 5 minutes just water skiing. Like, okay, now what? I got 10 mushrooms. Why am I not going anywhere? You know, more time spent wasted doing this. I find out I need to go into the whirlpool because, that makes sense. That's what you need to do. To go back in time, you need to get 10 mushrooms and dive in a whirlpool. Once in the whirlpool, then you end up in Philadelphia or where Joan of Arc is, or Isaac Newton's age, or whatever. And that's it. You're just doing this over and over and over again, going to different historical areas. So
you did it.
I did it.
But in the wrong order.
Apparently I did, because I was reading up later, and it was like, oh, you're really supposed to start with Isaac Newton. You get the better ending that way, or something. Like, better ending? What the heck? Don't tell me this thing's had different endings. I don't know. It's a bizarre game that it feels like Nintendo got hit with a lawsuit that said, you better come up with something educational. And it better Mario.
Here's the thing, Platty. So when you look up these games, like these Mario edutainment games, they're just licensed by Nintendo. They had nothing to do with these ones. They had no hands-on approach with them at all. It's companies like the Software Toolworks and Radical Entertainment that made them. Nintendo just licensed the characters.
Oh, I'm sure. There was no Mario. Like, literally, other than the sprite of Mario, a little spike in the water that looked like, the little guys that get thrown, and a mushroom, there was nothing Mario to this game. It could have been a point-and-click thing on a PC, but they made Mario the point-and-click and some stupid jet ski, water ski, whatever, to throw it in there.
Looking it up, Platty, there is an MS-DOS version of the game.
I don't doubt it.
There is, and that one I think has slightly different sprites. The only thing that was really borrowed was a handful of like the Mario World sprites for some of the main characters.
Ooh, and if you were in 1996, you could get the Microsoft Windows version.
Ooh. What an upgrade that was.
Version that came out in 1994. So, hey, there you go.
I remember renting this game on the Super Nintendo. I remember not really knowing how to progress.
I love reading YouTube comments for this. People were like, I just jet skied for hours. I didn't know what to do. I was 6 years old. All I did was jet ski. I couldn't read. I didn't know.
It's Mario jet ski. That's all it is.
I specifically remember the jet skiing, so I'm sure I got stuck.
I never actually played these games. I remember seeing, I think, Mario is Missing for this. Did that have this SNES release too? I forget.
Yes, it did.
Okay. I recall seeing them like in SNES boxes, and I was like, those look really, really cool, because I was not the most discerning, 4-year-old. I was like, those look really cool. Never played them. And now that I'm adult, I go, it's probably for the best. Although the sister game,
for the best.
Mario is Missing gave us Ouija. It gave us the immortal Ouija meme.
Did it also come to the? I thought I read somewhere, because I was looking at all these different things. Did this maybe indirectly lead to Luigi's Mansion?
I don't know if it did. I've never heard anybody say that. It very well could have been some sort of weird inspirational way, or maybe they were like, we could do that, but better. I don't know.
Why did I not play this game? Mario is Missing is another 93 game.
Well, there you go. We're going to have to do a 93 part 2.
93
Mario
dash
has
two.
you'll have to do a 93 in Mario because Mario's got like 7 or 8 games that came out this year. They're like all spin-off titles: Mario Kart, Super Mario Kart, Mario versus was it Mario versus Wario? I think that was the one. There were like 6 or 7 different titles that came out this year, and you just like touched 2.
Yeah, Mario. No, Super Mario Kart. That was 1992. That was a 93.
Oh, that's right. It got very popular in '93. It was we had a little mismatch. I had a bit of a mess up preparing for this episode, which Yangus very patiently corrected me over and over again about. Because when I looked up video games in 1993, I mistakenly went to the video games in 1993 article on Wikipedia, and that gave me games that were popular in '93, but not when they had come out. And so my first handful of games, Yangus told me, he goes, that came out in 1992. That came out in 1992. None of these games are from 1993. I go, okay, fine, I'll go find something else. But there are quite a few side games from 1993 for Mario, so you absolutely could do another side quest. Pure Mario.
Just on 93 Mario.
Just on 93 Mario. You got Yoshi's Cookie, Yoshi's Safari, Mario versus Wario. There's a lot of stuff that came out this year.
Okay, so apparently Mario's missing. The link to Luigi's Mansion is just that this game starred Luigi, and which wouldn't happen again until the Luigi Mansion games.
To Luigi Mansion, huh? It's Louisiana Mansion.
Where all the ghosts have a thick accent. No, Luigi's Mansion was actually kind of an accident. I recall this because I had the guide for Luigi's Mansion ages ago. That one was mostly an accident because they wanted to put together, to show off the GameCube and what it could do, they wanted to put together a 3D exploration game. And so they started basically with a ninja castle, and then they tried to make that, if I recall correctly, more available to international audiences. They transitioned into a dollhouse setting, and then they said, okay, we've got our dollhouse, we've got our haunted exploration, let's make it haunted. And how we're going to do, let's give Luigi something to do, because we kind of threw him into the wastebasket for the latter half of the 90s. And so let's give him something to do. And so that's how we got the Luigi in Luigi's Mansion.
I only played the third one, and now I kind of want to go back and play the other two. I think they're both they're both ported to the 3DS. So
yeah, they're both on there. I'd recommend the first one for sure.
Poor Luigi. The 64 kicked him to the curb.
All right, well, we got a couple more. Now Yangus will maybe listen to me. I got no transition here. We just spent all this time talking about Mario, so you know what, Yangus? Talk about Doom.
Yeah, I figure that's a good way since I was getting demonized for saying when stuff came out in 92 instead of 93. So I guess I'm from hell.
There.
Like a lot of
going
these
into space
from
again?
Doom.
Are we going into space? This was a very spacey year for games, I think.
Yeah, sci-fi was big in the 90s, that's for sure. But yeah, so for my game, I decided for my other game to pick Doom, the original Doom from 1993. It was created by id Software, and it's pretty much one of the most influential games of all time. And like Oz was talking about with Myst, how that game has been ported over just about everything. Doom has also been ported to just about everything. Like, people have even gotten it working on like those Texas Instrument calculators. Like the first level, they've gotten the whole thing put into one of those. It's crazy. So the plot for Doom, pretty simple. You are a lone survivor on a Mars moon base, and you have to fight your way through the demons of hell, eventually ending up in hell itself and taking the demons down on their home turf. The game's pretty easy to learn and play. You just have to worry about moving around. You turn left and right, you straight, and you just have to point, click, and shoot. You don't have to worry about like later FPS where you have to like move up and down. Like where you'd have to use like your right stick to aim all over the place and your left stick to move. This one you just got to worry about moving around. You know, turn and make sure you're facing the enemy, and then bam, you shoot them. I did appreciate that when playing this because I really don't play FPS games all that much. Like, the few that I have are just like Team Fortress 2 back when I was in college, GoldenEye on the N64 and on the Nintendo Wii, the Metroid Prime games, a little bit of BioShock. Really, it's not a genre that I'm interested in. But Doom was always one I wanted to try out in some fashion because of the more fast-paced, action-y gameplay. And after playing a little bit of Doom 2016, I was like, hey, I really want to go back and check out the original 2. Thankfully, it's on the Switch. Like, you usually find it on sale for like $2. Anyway, so Doom is pretty easy to learn. Can be a little.
Did you play it on your refrigerator?
What?
Did you play it on your refrigerator?
No, but I would love to see the fridge that can play it, because I have heard about that one too. But Doom, luckily, is, like I said, pretty easy to learn. Can be hard to master because it can get pretty difficult, especially depending on what setting you pick for the difficulty-wise and what levels you're playing on. But thankfully, you do have a lot of different weapons you can use, including chainsaws. You can get booster shots, which make you kill enemies in one punch. There's the shotgun, a plasma gun. There is a rocket launcher you can get. You have your standard handgun, and you get the infamous BFG, or the big fucking gun, which can just one-shot kill just about everything in the game. And if you come across any of the big boss monsters like the Cyber Demon or the Spider Tank, all it takes is about like 2-3 shots from that one, good clean hits, they're dead. When I was playing this game, the first time I played it was late last year when it was on sale. I picked it up for, like I said, $2, and I've slowly made my way through it. It's a good game to just like play a few levels, put it aside, play a few levels, put it aside. And surprisingly, when I played it, I was really taken back by how many secrets there are per level. Like, there's a ton you can find. There's secret doors you can open by hitting the right enemies. You can end up stepping on to just like the right part of a map or a room, and it can open up a secret door somewhere for you. You do have a little mini map you can check too to kind of like figure out where some of these areas might be at. Or you have windows you can look through and be like, well, that's weird. There's a weapon out there, but I can't seem to find a way. And my favorite way that I always found them was if you walked against certain walls, and if you noticed a wall was like a little bit off, you could push the action button, and hey, it opens up a secret door for you, so you can go in and collect, some refills on ammo. You can collect any weapons you might have lost if you died during a level. Or in some cases, you can open a secret room and there's like really powerful invisible enemies in there that'll come after you as soon as you open the door. You never know what you're going to get. But I did like that this game had a ton of secrets to it to discover. And it's been fun revisiting some of the early levels and like either trying it on a new difficulty or just seeing if I can, like put it down on the easiest setting, just get rid of all the enemies and like try and explore around and see like if there's any sort of secret buttons or walls that you can open up stuff to get to new little areas. This, like I said before, the game can get pretty difficult. Like the settings are all pretty much the game like being like, oh, make this hard as hell, or let me feel pain plenty, or don't hurt me please. Like that's one of the easiest settings, is like, don't hurt me. But so this game did have a nice little sense of humor to it, and even with the story too, like you really only see like a bit of story text at the very end once you've beaten a chapter, and the game's just like, oh, things, they went to hell, you gotta fight your way through all this madness, or oh, you thought you were gonna escape, but oh, it turns out it was just a trap by the demons. And probably my favorite bit of that, for this bit of humor that the game has, is when you beat the game itself. So you defeat the spider demon or the spider tank monster. It says, oh, you've defeated the leader of hell. All the demons, run back in fear from you, and you're able to escape no problem. Hopefully things are fine in the real world. Well, then it cuts to an ending screen with what looks like a sunset. There's some rabbits in a green field. Everything looks all peaceful. There's some happy music playing. Camera slowly pans over. There's a city on fire. Said rabbit's head is on a stake, and it shows the city is starting to be overrun by demons. And the last thing you see is the end fly onto the screen with like different gun sound effects going off in the background. So perfect way to set up a possible sequel, which, with how successful Doom ended up being, it very much got that sequel, and it received, like I said a little bit ago, received a ton of ports. If you have any sort of game console or computer, or you have a really good Texas Instrument calculator, you can play Doom in some fashion. But I really enjoyed playing through this. One, because even though I'm not really big on FPS games, it was cool to see what game really helped influence the FPS genre. It's a good game. If you're just looking for some like quick action type gameplay, you don't have to worry about too much about thinking about too many things. It's fun to explore the levels, and I really enjoyed this. I don't know if it was originally MS-DOS or what specific PC hardware this was originally intended for, but I really enjoy how it has sort of that hard rock, early computer sound mix going for it. It's really cool because you have the iconic Doom main theme from the first level with the opening cards. As soon as you hear it, it's like, oh, that's Doom. And the rest of the soundtrack does a really good job of fitting the mood as well, whether it works in, more rock sounds or more like ambient, ominous sounds as you get a little further into the game, get into hell and everything like that. So there's actually a lot of really good details to this game, and I really enjoyed playing through it. Definitely some times where it was like, oh, this is super annoying, super frustrating, especially against the Cyber Demon with its super powerful rocket launcher it can shoot at you. But I think this is a really good game, even to this day, and I can see why it's been ported to so many systems and why so many people, hold it in such high regard. And like I said, if you have any sort of current system like the Switch, PS4, Steam, stuff like that, there's plenty of ways to play it. It's not too expensive of a game. I assume it's about the same price on other consoles, about $5 or so, a little cheaper with any sales. So, check it out if you want to. And because before I forget, have any of you guys played the original Doom or any of the Doom games at all?
Yeah, I love the whole series. The original is great, though.
Yeah, I remember playing this back in the day. I didn't have it myself, but I had a neighbor friend whose parents would buy him all the latest video games, including computer games as well. And I remember when I first went over to his house and watched him play this game, I felt like, should I really be watching this? Because it was I was 13 at the time, since it was '93. So I know for a fact that my parents never would have bought this kind of game for me. It was just too gory, and it was kind of scary too. It had quite the demonic atmosphere to it, and I remember watching it for the first time and being blown away about how scary and gory and everything that it was. It was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely like that too. That I was wondering when going into it, like, okay, what's this really like graphically and stylistically, what's it going to be like? And really, I think the game still really holds up, like, appearance-wise. I really like how the game handles, like, the monster graphics, how, like, the further away you can still make out, like, which each individual monster is supposed to be, or, like, if there's a human zombie or something like that. You can still make it out, but then the closer you get, you get those more details. It kind of expands the sprite for you. There's a lot of really cool little details in this game, and I can imagine, like, back in '93 when people were playing this for the first time, how mind-blowing, like, some of this stuff must have been, seeing it. Or, like, how your reaction was, Pendy, where you're watching, you're like, ooh, I don't know if I should, be watching this sort of thing. Like, this is pretty crazy,
Yeah.
Did you ever have any experiences with this one, Platty? Or Jaybird, either one of you guys?
I have not played this. I think Wolfenstein 3D was the last shooter I played, which I looked up. That was '91, so can't talk.
Yeah, I think Wolfenstein was the precursor game that I can't remember their names, unfortunately, but the two big guys from id Software that they worked on, and then they were like, we can do that, but we can make it bigger and better or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Wolfenstein, just like
Software.
Doom, that's had a number of sequels in recent years too. Like there's been Wolfenstein: The New Blood or New World Blood, whatever that one's called. So it's cool to see that these series, that were so influential back then, that they're still able to have new sequels come out now, and that they're people who are still really passionate, about these games, expanding them out and so forth. Like I think it was you, Austin, we had our favorite games of 2020 episode where you were talking about Doom Eternal, and really the way you were describing everything, it sounds like the people who made that game were pretty passionate about Doom with everything they were putting into it.
Yeah. Doom Eternals and 2016 Doom, both of those games are great. A little bit more action packed than classic Doom, but the tone is still there.
Yeah, I mean, Wolfenstein and Doom were very iconic for their time and definitely cemented FPS games as a popular genre that would just eventually explode into one of the most popular genres in video games.
Yeah, I mean, for a time they didn't call them first-person shooters. They called them Doom clones.
Mm-hmm.
That's before the term first-person shooter came about.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, I think that final comment that spells doom for the end of this discussion, because we've been talking about such iconic series for a while. I think we're going to end with Brother Jaybird's last obscure entry that he wanted to talk about tonight. Hey, you put a third one on the list. You're going to get called on 3 times.
That was a backup. Okay, I can do that. It's more robots. We can do it. Sorry, I interrupted your transition. Go ahead.
No, that's the transition. Go robots.
Well, it is more robots, and this time there's also cuddly animals. This one is Sonic CD. One of the early Sonic game titles. It's actually, in some ways, it was actually the second Sonic the Hedgehog title to be released, and has a lot of, again, like Kirby's Adventure, because this is '93. This is early video game history. This is where a lot of the prototypes of a lot of modern franchises got started. We talked about Kirby, we talked about Mega Man. Now we're going to talk about Sonic. This game features the iconic elements of Sonic and Dr. Eggman, naturally, competing to save or otherwise exploit the world. But it also introduces two other members of the cast that would later become regulars. Metal Sonic, one of Eggman's go-to top evil robots, and Amy Rose, who most people remember as Sonic's would-be girlfriend. And this game is premised on the idea that Eggman has successfully gotten himself a hold of a planet, a whole planet, which has mystical artifacts allowing him to manipulate time. And so he's gone back in time using the magical time stones of the little planet. I forget if it was called the Big Little Planet or just Little Planet. No, Big Little Planet, I think, was a later game that came out from an entirely different developer. But it is essentially a big little planet. It's about the size of a moon.
Does it have jet skis, though? Does that have anything to do with jet skis?
What, Big Little Planet? Might be. I never actually played.
Well, this time zone, I mean, we've established that 1993, that's how you went forward and backwards in time, jet skiing.
I mean, on Little Big Planet, you could probably make some water jet ski game levels. It's very much
I'll stop interrupting.
The creativity tools in those games.
No. Go ahead and interrupt me. I need the sparring. So the premise of this game is that Eggman has taken over a whole planet. He's harvesting its cosmic artifacts to get himself into the past, so he can harvest the resources of the environment with his robotics. And Sonic has to stop him, because if Sonic doesn't, he will end up in a future in which Eggman has ruined the environment through misuse of his robotics and technology. And so Sonic's job is to go and basically put a stop to Eggman in the past. And so each level features a different environment in which Sonic must navigate, not merely to the end, but secretly into the past in order to get the time stones and put things right. Because if you don't, you go to what we call the bad future, in which Eggman has taken over, the environment is ruined, and everything is dark and ugly. And if Sonic successfully collects all the time stones and puts a stop to Eggman's robots, he fixes the past, and thus he unlocks the good future. In which technology is also very prevalent, but is in harmony with nature. This game has a green theme again with Dr. Eggman, who from the start was always kidnapping animals and stuffing them into robots. But the problem here isn't the simplistic message of technology ruins nature so much as it is technology ought to work in harmony with nature. And Eggman just doesn't work in harmony with anyone. So Sonic is out to save the world, and on the way he's out to save Amy Rose, who was kidnapped by Metal Sonic. And like many Sonic games, it's got high-speed platforming. It's got robots to beat. This game was, I don't know if I'd call it a bigger hit than Sonic 2. It was weird. It was technically the second Sonic game in development, but it came out after Sonic 2 did. A rumor, if I understand the story correctly, some of the development in Sonic 2 was Sonic. Let's see here. Sonic CD was going to be to start as a port of Sonic 2, but became a separate game after Sonic 2 flopped in Japan. Sonic is in a weird spot as a character because he's kind of both influenced by the Japanese and the West. Sega is a mostly Japanese company, but they do a lot of work in the West more than Nintendo did. And so a lot of Sonic's games were actually very, very popular in America and Europe, but not in Japan. So that puts this game in an awkward position where it's helping to assemble Sonic's universe piecemeal, because this game introduces Amy and Metal Sonic, and Sonic 2 introduces Tails, and then Sonic 3 introduces Knuckles, but that's later. So this is a smaller step up for the Sonic franchise than it would be otherwise, by introducing some new characters. Nothing really big, but it gives Sonic the quote-unquote love interest. Poor Amy. I feel so bad for Amy. She's never had very good character writing, and she's always either a nothing burger or has some of the worst writing around. I feel so bad for her.
Well, you can't all be Tails.
Let's see. Has anybody else played Sonic CD?
Did you say what this came out on? What was this on?
This came out on the Sega CD.
Okay, so that's why it was Sonic CD.
Yeah. Well, we don't have, Sonic Genesis yet, or Sonic Saturn, but, we have a Sonic CD. Let's see. They actually revamped the boss fight with Metal Sonic in the in the game Sonic Generations. They actually had a dedicated remake of that boss fight. That was actually pretty cool. Like all Sonic games, most of Sonic's music is great. Sonic CD has a lot of iconic music. They actually redid like 80% of the soundtrack for the Western release. So there are 2 soundtracks that you can go dig up for this game. Both are good. Go help yourselves. Go find them. Enjoy them. Nice. This game actually. This game has an interesting bit of trivia that I found recently. In that, in one version of the game released, I don't know how well read you guys are in Sonic lore and characters, but in one version of the game, for the North American release, they didn't call Amy Rose, or her original name back then was Rosie the Rascal. I don't think she actually became Amy Rose until like Sonic Adventure later in the decade. But in the North American release, she was not called Amy Rose or Rosie the Rascal. She was called Princess Sally, which was a name that was reused for Sally Acorn, who became an independent, dedicated character in the Sonic TV series, and then the American Sonic comics by Archie afterwards. So I did not realize that Sally was based on, effectively just derived from an extra name for Amy. That was an interesting bit of trivia. But you'd have to know and care about Sonic characters a whole lot to care about that, and I totally understand. I may be alone in this conversation at the moment.
Yeah, I'm just not super familiar with Sonic. I've played I played the original a little bit, but I missed out on the Genesis, so.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I missed out on a lot until the GameCube, so don't worry too much about that. If you've got the Blue Hedgehog Goes Fast thing down, you're pretty golden with all of Sonic.
I think I've watched more Sonic movie than I have played Sonic games.
Which movie?
Just the the first live action blended one.
Oh, the one that came out, the road trip movie, Sonic's Road Trip.
Is that what that was? I don't know. It was a couple of years ago. It was just like 2 years ago.
That's not the official name, but that's basically what the plot was. Road trip.
Yeah, it's got James Marsden, Jim Carrey as Dr. Eggman.
Oh, yeah. That was it.
Who not Dr. Eggman until he becomes Dr. Eggman during the Stinger's like, hey, you sat through this video. Maybe if you come again to the sequel, we'll have a real Dr. Eggman for you that time. Oh my gosh.
I like how
not to knock Jim Carrey's acting, but I mean, if you were going to give us Dr. Eggman, could we have a real Dr. Eggman, please?
Still, I think that was it's kind of like an origin story for how Eggman became Eggman, at least in that universe, and I like how they set that up.
Yeah, it's passable. Not my thing. Just commit to the premise. Okay, you've got a little 3 foot tall hedgehog that goes faster than the speed of sound. Okay, just commit. Eggman doesn't need an origin story.
Well, they gave him one, and he certainly was the real deal by the end of the movie with the.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just being a stinker. But I asked in the original because they've had like maybe 5 or 6 different animated things with Sonic. I was thinking in particular there's Sonic the movie from '96, which is a little animated adventure, an original video animation OVA from Japan that has Sonic and Metal Sonic in it. A lot of Sonic memes came out of that movie. Because it turns out Sonic and the evil Metal Sonic have a telepathic connection, and this gets in the way during a fight. There's one entire... at one point, Sonic tells Metal Sonic, "You may know everything I'm going to do, but that won't help you because I know everything you're going to do." Strange, isn't it?
So, are there any other games out there that you guys want to give a 30-second shout-out to as your 1993 honorable mentions? We already threw Math Blaster in there, so.
I know Matt Kraft was going to go over one of the Breath of Fire games, and that you never can go wrong with the Breath of Fire series. So I think he was going to go over the second one. Maybe that was the one that came out in '93. But yeah, I think
it was actually the beginning one. The original.
Okay. But yeah, those are pretty good. Those are always fun.
Yeah, and the first one's on Yangus. That's on the Nintendo Online or the Switch Online, right?
Yeah, both of them are.
Yep, I remember playing the first. It was good enough to get me to play the second, and then I crapped out of that for some reason. I don't remember being bad. I just remember, I think, I was in the middle of playing it, and something that I wanted to play came out.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance, 3 and 4, they really ramp it up. It's those are both really good RPG titles, so check them out.
Any other honorable mentions?
Well, hold up. Let me get my video games that came out in 1993 tab, and we'll see what's what.
Close the video games that sold a lot in '93 or were popular in '93.
No, I can find video games that came out in '93. I just need a second here.
There were actually a lot.
Wiped up.
We've hit on the game that coined the 4X term. We've hit Mega Man, Mario, Kirby, Sonic, Doom was the beginning. Kind of the origins of first-person shooters. We've other than my ill thought out Super Mario or Mario's Time Machine game, we've hit a lot of big series tonight.
Oh, we did Barrel Roll. It's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say Star Fox. That's a series, and Myst started this whole fascination with like Oz said, the CD games, computer games, had its own series of games that have been ported a million times.
Link's Awakening came out in '93.
Oh, there you go. Another one with wasn't that remade last year?
A couple years ago.
It was 2019.
Okay.
Gosh, has it been that long?
We're still in the pandemic, man.
Oh,
it's still
yeah.
2020 in my head.
Leisure Suit Larry 6 came out in
Yes, of course.
Recently played through that entire franchise.
Cheap Todeo no Daisaksen 2.
Gesundheit.
At Chip and Dale's Rescue Ranger. They had apparently a second Chip and Dale Rescue Ranger game come out in 1993 in Japan.
Guess they loved their
DuckTales 2.
Little mammals.
Mighty Final Fight. Puyo Puyo came out in 1993.
Puyo.
Is that a puzzle game?
I think that's the one where you have to no, I'm thinking of Bubble Bobble.
It's
Puyo Puyo Bubble Bobble.
It's a game kind of like Tetris. Not really, but
yeah, Puyo Puyo, you have to get 4 in a row of a certain color.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the NES port came out in '93.
The latest release was Puyo Puyo Tetris 2.
Yeah. I've been meaning to get that one. It looks pretty fun. I became a big fan of the Puyo Puyo games about 2 years ago. They're pretty fun puzzle games.
Bubble Bobble Part 2 came out in 1993.
How did we forget?
Well, it took America by storm.
Yes. I mean, if I wasn't too busy playing Mario's Time Machine, I probably would have been all over that.
Kirby's Pinball Land came out in 1993.
SimCity 2000.
SimCity 2000. That's 7 years early.
Yeah, I remember. I think that's the first one I got was SimCity 2000.
Uh-oh. Somebody coming?
Uh-oh. Well, maybe we should wrap this up before we get revisited here. Oh, boy. Oh, looking at our chat. All right. I think that's about it for this episode of Sidequest. Thank you, Brother Jaybird. Thank you, AustNerevar. And thank you, Pendy, for joining us tonight to talk about games that came out in 1993.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Matt Kraft may not have been with us tonight, but may not have been here to talk with us tonight, but he was here in spirit. So the Breath of Fire comments were for you, Matt Kraft. Whenever you listen to this episode,
I'll do a barrel roll for you, Matt Kraft.
Yes.
And Brother Jaybird picked up Kirbys Adventure, so we got you covered. Alrighty. You might have noticed, other than barrel rolls, something that we usually don't talk about on our podcast is Patreon, because we only talk about it when we say we don't use Patreon. We're all just longtime fans of these games from 1993 that we just want to talk about them, let you know that you should give them a try, or in Mario's Time Machine, just don't. Just skip it. But if you are so inclined to pull out your wallet, digitally at least, and support something, go on over to the Dragon's Den at www.woodus.com/den. Click on support this site there. Woodus has owned and maintained the Dragon's Den fan site for over 20 years. I'm sure he'd appreciate any donation. Or you can use his Amazon affiliate links there. He's got a brand new one right in the dead center of the page. It's not very obtrusive, just some little text there. He used to just have like links to buy a bunch of Dragon Quest stuff, but now you can use his Amazon affiliate link to buy anything. So as I keep saying, if you're going to buy a new microwave, buy a new car, buy something large on Amazon, go on over there. I'm sure he'll get like 0.1%. And, your new car will get him maybe a coffee's worth of money there, and it won't cost you a thing.
If you have any suggestions for future episodes of SideQuest, we'd be happy to hear from you. You can contact Plattym via his Twitter, Plattym3. You can reach him via the Dragon's Den itself, via personal messages or on the forums, or you can contact him through the Dragon's Den Discord run by our friend Orion. You can also contact me, YangustheLegendaryBandit, on the Dragon's Den through the same means as Platty, or through the Dragon's Den Discord. We have a list of ideas that we've come up with for episodes, and if you have any other ideas, we'd be happy to hear from you, to add it to the list, or to possibly revisit certain topics in the future, depending on the situation.
Oh, I'm a little scared to say this. Bye, everyone.
SideQuest complete. Remember, party like it's 1993.
There was no Yoda.